morning, everybody. Brendan here, coming at you from Spartan Fitness to start your week off right on this Monday with a little lesson on weight loss and calories. And so what I want to get across today is a couple things, and I'm going to go through this, and at the end it's all going to come together. So if it doesn't make sense in the beginning, just sort of hang in there with me. I'm going to make it as short as possible. First of all, what I want to talk about is a little education on what a calorie is. Calories aren't these mythical things that just get absorbed into our system from the atmosphere. As a matter of fact, anytime we're eating food, we're actually eating the sun. And what I mean by that is the sun shines down on the planet, plants create photosynthesis, thereby storing the energy of the sun. Animals eat those plants. We eat those animals and we eat those plants. So the energy coming from the sun is eventually ingested by us. So essentially, we are the sun. We wouldn't be able to exist without it. Our body in a chemical structure is made up from the chemicals that were transmitted from the sun to the earth to grow plants, to feed animals, to feed us, and also for us to eat the plants as well. So scientifically speaking, what a calorie is it's a unit of heat. Specifically, it's the energy needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. So what does that mean for you? Well, not a whole lot. You don't really have to pay too much attention to that. But what you do have to pay attention to is that calories are important. They're an important method for us to take control of our health and take control of our fitness in the future and take control of our longevity and sense of well-being as well. It's very hard for us to feel complete and whole unless we are lean, strong people. And the reason for that is simply because we know now, scientifically speaking, that most major diseases come from an excess amount of body fat. So when we are overweight, we know we're at risk and we don't feel good as well. So fat loss should be a main priority. So that is what a calorie is. Now, your goal should never be to lose weight. That shouldn't be anything that you focus on because weight is a relatively vague term. It can mean a lot of things. And I have some of those things mentioned here. If you were to lose weight, you could be losing water, bowel contents, muscle, and then fat. Now, most people watching this video have probably gone on a cleanse before, or have probably done some fasting before, or have probably done some sort of caloric restriction before. And the reason that you lose weight on a fast or a juice cleanse or just a caloric restriction is mostly because the contents of your bowels is less. So if we have less food in our bowels, that food is going to require water for digestion, and that is going to make up the bulk of the amount of weight that we lose when we do a fast, a cleanse, or restrict our calories. So anytime we're restricting the amount of food going in our bodies hang on to less water that's needed to digest the food in our bowels. And this is why you immediately gain the weight back if you go on a cleanse and then you return to eating as normal, or you go on a fast and you return to eating as normal, or you just restrict your calories for a little bit and then you go on eating as normal. It's because the weight that you lost actually wasn't fat. It was some of these other things. Now, under no circumstance should we be focused on losing weight, because one thing that can happen is that we could lose muscle. Now, muscle gain for most people should be a goal. For people who have been working out for 10, 15, 20 years, their muscle gain is over. So all they're doing at some point is maintaining that muscle mass that they gained a long time ago. But if you're new to fitness, and new is 5 years or less, then muscle building should be your goal. And the reason muscle building should be your goal is the muscles are an active organ. They don't just contract and help us move heavy stuff. They do a lot of things that are beneficial to the body and to the metabolism. So, when you focus on losing weight, you could just be losing water, bowel contents, muscle, and then some fat. When fat loss is the cause of major disease, it's the last on the list. So, the question then is going to be, how do we lose fat, and what does actual weight loss look like? Well, depending upon the person, and everybody's different, weight loss is going to look different. But if I was to draw out a scale of what actual weight loss looks like, this line is going to represent time. So I'm going to draw a little clock here. Excuse me. This line is going to represent time, so I'm going to draw a little clock here. This line is going to represent weight, specifically fat weight. So if we're trying to lose fat is the main weight loss, what's going to happen is if we start out on this high, we're going to go down and drop, okay? Now once we drop, our body has to readjust to the new amount of adipose tissue on the body. So the fat requires less storage of water, and the fat requires less overall weight because of the water, number one. And then number two, as we start to lose fat, it comes out of the muscles, it comes out of the liver, and then it comes out of the subcutaneous storage under the skin, and then it comes out of the visceral fat, which is in and around the organ. So we can lose fat from a lot of places. So weight is going to go down. But once our muscles and our liver and our adipose tissue and our visceral system actually adjust to that fat loss, there will be a minor gain again. Follow me here. If you keep going, and I said if you keep going because most of the time when people get to this slow gain and they're doing everything right, they give up because they see a gain and they don't want that to happen because they're too focused on weight and not focused on health and longevity. So if health and longevity is your focus and you're eating right, then you're always doing good regardless of what this says because you're putting the right foods in and you're doing the right things for your body. So you keep going and then you have another loss. Okay, this is good news. Our body adjusted to the new amount of fat in the system and then it went down again. Now anytime we lose weight for the second time, there's going to be a minor uptick for the readjustment. And this is going to keep happening. And if this is going to keep happening over a long period of time, fat loss is going to look something like this. Now these are the points at which most people give up here, these peaks. But if you were to draw a line connecting the valleys, you're going to see that the weight is decreasing the entire time. This is why, one of the main reasons, you shouldn't focus on fat loss, or weight loss, sorry. You should focus on fat loss. Because as your body continues to adjust, it's going to go back up in weight, then it's going to go down as it adjusts, and that's going to happen over and over again. Now, if every time it goes up and you're so focused on that number, that's when you start eating stuff you shouldn't again, that's when you stop exercising, that's when you start making bad decisions based upon that number. Weight loss should never be a goal. Fat loss should be a goal. The body has to adjust. Now, the only exception to this rule is if you have a lot of weight to lose. I'm talking 30% body fat or more, then you're gonna have a decrease, 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 decrease until your body needs to start adjusting, and then it's gonna go up, down, just like this person here. So, as you can clearly see, if we focus on weight loss alone, mentally, we make bad decisions and we stop losing weight. That's why fat loss should be the focus, and health and longevity is the underlying issue. Okay? Now, what we want to talk about is what fat is, how to lose it, how to keep it off, and what that means. So, what I first want to talk about is if we were to go into a caloric deficit, which is right here, the first one on the list. If you want to lose fat, you've got to consume less calories than your body needs on a daily basis. How many calories? Well, that's kind of up to you. Generally speaking, however, you want to lose amount of weight that's sustainable. And so the caloric deficit has got to be a specific number. And that number is different for everybody. If you have a lot of weight to lose, you can go into more of a deficit. If you don't have a lot of weight to lose, you need to go into a less of a deficit. The specifics on that are another talk. But what I want to say today is that if you're in a consistent caloric deficit, the weight is going to go down. Now, how do you get the fat to go down, since we talked about how detrimental it is to focus on weight? Well, we need an amino acid surplus or a protein abundance. And so when we restrict calories, but at the same time we're eating more protein or amino acid surplus, what's going to happen is our body does not have the option to lose muscle, so it's not going to do so. And in having a caloric deficit with an amino acid surplus, we're going to maintain muscle mass and we're going to lose fat. Now, what I want to say about that is there's a lot of confusion out there about fat loss and muscle gain. So losing fat and gaining muscle. I hear people say often, well, I haven't lost weight in 6 weeks, but I'm losing fat and gaining muscle because I feel stronger and I'm performing better. Well, it's great that you feel stronger and you're performing better, but that would happen with exercise alone. And at some point that's going to fall off and you're going to have to focus on nutrition, but you will never gain more muscle than the fat that you lose on a weekly basis. It is never going to happen unless you're on performance enhancing drugs, which I do not recommend. Men, under optimum circumstances and being natural, can gain about 6 to 8 pounds of muscle per year. Now, if you divide that by 52 weeks, that's going to be 0.15 pounds a week is what you're going to lose. So if a guy says to me, hey, I haven't lost weight in 8 weeks, but I must be gaining muscle, right? So I'm still losing fat. Well, not necessarily. If you take the 0.15 times 8 weeks, I don't think that equals enough weight to say that you traded fat for muscle. It just doesn't happen at a high enough rate. Women, under optimum circumstances, this is training at the most efficient way, getting the best amount of nutrients in your body, always in an amino acid surplus, focusing on your sleep, focusing on your water. The same goes for men. Maximum, you're gonna gain 2 to 6 pounds of muscle per year. You divide that by 52 weeks, and that's 0.11 pounds a week. So this is why someone says, but I'm losing fat and gaining muscle, so my weight is staying the same. No, that's actually not happening. You're getting stronger, but simply activating the muscle tissues will get you stronger just by itself. Now, long-term strength, you do have to focus on an amino acid surplus. Long-term, eventually that strength's gonna fall off. Eventually what we call the newbie gains are gonna fall off. Anybody coming to the gym for the first couple of years is gonna make some gains just because their body's getting readjusted to exercise. But after that, to make gains is very, very hard. Especially if you've been super consistent, it's gonna happen a little easier, but it's still gonna be very hard. Now, a lot of people confuse muscle gaining with strength. Now, you don't have to gain more muscle to gain strength. So just because your PRs are going up in the gym doesn't mean you're actually gaining muscle. What that means is that the cross section of your muscle is getting stronger, which does not require a size increase. Also, too, you've got to consider if you're trying new movements, which you've never chosen before, those are going to increase even if you've been training for 15 years, but you decide to do something new, the body's going to adjust to that new movement and you're going to gain strength. So even years into it, you can't say, but I'm gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time. It doesn't quite work that way. So actual fat loss looks like this. There's highs and there's lows, right? Gaining muscle to outshadow fat doesn't actually happen. When we lose weight, the primary weight that we lose usually is water, bowel contents, muscle, and then somewhere down the line is going to be fat. So in order to lose 100% fat, you're gonna focus on an amino acid surplus and an overall caloric deficit. Now, how many calories do you need on a daily basis to maintain weight? Well, it depends on the person, but a rough estimate is, for men, about 15 calories per pound. 15 calories per pound usually is what men eat to maintain weight. And obviously plus or minus a few. And women is almost the same, but women burn less calories because of testosterone. Testosterone helps men maintain muscle, burn more from fat if we're in a caloric deficit. That's why men lose weight so much faster, and women usually complain about that. So women, they're gonna need about 10 to 13 calories per pound to maintain weight. Now, maintenance usually isn't the goal unless you're already at a percentage of body fat that takes you at a risk for future disease. So we need to be in a deficit from there, a caloric deficit with an amino acid surplus. So how do we do that? Well, we take our body weight times 15 if we're a man, we take it times 10 or 13 if we're a woman, 10 if you think you have a slow metabolism, 13 if you think you have a little bit of a higher metabolism, and that's how many calories we need to maintain weight. So to go into a deficit from there, it depends on how much you weigh. And more importantly, it depends on your body composition, percentage of body fat. Now, you don't have to get all technical and know exactly where your percentage of body fat is, but what I will say is that if you think you have 40 or more pounds to lose, you can stand to go into a 20% caloric deficit. So take your body weight, if you're a man, times 15. That's gonna be your maintenance calories. And you take that times 0.2. And that's how many calories you take out of the total calories from the first calculation. Women would be the exact same. Take your body weight, slow metabolism times 10, fast metabolism times 13. And then you would reduce that by 20% if you have 40 pounds or more to lose. Now, if you only have 15 or 20 pounds to lose, the caloric deficit is gonna be different. It's gonna be 15% or 10%. Now, we all want weight loss yesterday. We all wish we could just get it over with and get it done and then move on with our lives. But that is not a good approach. And the reason that's not a good approach is because the character necessary to sustain a lean physique is only built during the process of proper nutrition over an extended period of time. That's why lottery winners generally go bankrupt within 10 years. They haven't built the character necessary to facilitate that high level of income. That's also why gastric bypass patients on a 10-year study, hardly any of them maintain their weight loss. It's a very small percentage. And that's because the character to maintain a lean body wasn't built through the process of daily caloric restriction, amino acid abundance, high level of activity. These things are required to sustain that. So when you don't build the character that requires you to do those things on a daily basis, you don't generally hold on to the results. So if you learned anything from today's talk, what I want you to learn is that weight loss should never be a goal. Ever, ever, ever. The goal should be fat loss, and so when you start to go up on the scale a little bit, you continue with what you're doing. Continue the exercise, continue the proper nutrition, and it will eventually go down in a week or two. If it does not, it's because you're not in a caloric deficit. And it's easy to just put yourself in a caloric deficit. Without being too complicated, all you do is reduce your calories by a little bit. 200 calories. You take 200 calories times 7 days a week, that's gonna be 1,400 calories. So you take 200 calories times 7 days a week, that's gonna equal 1,400 calories. Now, why is this number important? Well, because we know the exact amount of calories that are in a pound of fat. We also know the exact amount of calories that are in a pound of muscle. So 1,400 calories is gonna be your deficit for the week if you take 200 calories out a day. Now, 200 calories isn't a lot. That's only about a tablespoon or a serving of peanut butter, or 2 tablespoons of olive oil, or two tablespoons of butter. So it's not a lot of calories. But if you take that 1,400 calories, what you got to remember is that 1 pound of fat is worth 3,500 calories of energy. So that is almost a half a pound right there, just from 1 week of a 200 calorie deficit on a daily basis. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, and I know we won it yesterday, but you gotta trust me, you wanna lose it relatively slow, unless you have a ton of weight to lose, and then that's totally different. We gotta get you lean as soon as possible because you're currently at large risk for disease. Now, if you only have a 20 to 30 pounds to lose or something like that, 200 calories a deficit a day is plenty. It's gonna get you a half a pound a week, and you're gonna see this if you track the valleys. Hell, if you even track the peaks, you're gonna see that if you go down just like that. But there will be minor fluctuations up, and that's fine. Now, when you're talking about muscle gain, if we wanna gain 1 pound of muscle, we need to be in abundance of 2,500 calories. Now that's a vague term. I know calories is a vague term because it can come from fats, it can come from proteins, it can come from carbohydrates, it can come from ethanol, it can come from sugar alcohols, it can come from a lot of different places. But what I want you guys to focus on is that 2,500 calories, if you want to build muscle, has got to come from your amino acid surplus. So while you're in a caloric deficit, you're in amino acid surplus. So that is why it takes so long to build muscle as a natural person. And that's because your nitrogen balance goes up at a very slow rate. So in order to put that 2,500 calories in a caloric surplus in the form of aminos on a weekly basis, if you're eating 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, that's usually gonna do it. What is lean body mass? Well, that's how much you would weigh as 0% body fat. Now, you don't need to get too technical about the details. What I wanna say is that if you have a large frame and you're a woman, you're gonna eat about 140 to 160 grams of protein a day. If you're a large frame man, I'm talking tall, broad shoulders, you're gonna eat 200 to 225 grams of protein a day. Now, this is splitting hairs. There's no specifics about that. You can add or subtract 10 grams from that and it's really not gonna make too much of a difference as far as your body is concerned. But if you do that correctly for a year's time, men have the potential to gain 6 to 8 pounds of muscle. Women have the potential to gain 2 to 6 pounds of muscle. So that's what we want to focus on. And the reason we want to focus on building muscle is because muscle burns more calories. You've heard that? It doesn't exactly. So a calorie is a unit of heat. We discussed that already. And our body's primary focus is to maintain a certain temperature. If we go a couple degrees below that temperature, bad things happen. If we go a couple of degrees above that temperature, bad things happen. But muscle and fat have to maintain the same temperature. So on a sedentary basis, muscle and fat burn the same amount of calories. However, muscle is an active tissue and it requires nutrients to be contracted. So when you're exercising, you do burn more calories. Now, how much more? Well, maybe an extra 200 a day if you do this for 5 years' time and you gain the appropriate amount of muscle. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but just gaining a couple pounds of muscle can cause this process to happen a lot faster, especially in the long term, 2 years plus, 2 to 5 years, something like that. So we don't want to lose weight. We do want to lose fat. You cannot gain enough muscle to outshadow your fat loss. If you do want to gain muscle for future health, you have to be in abundance of amino acids. If you do want to lose fat for future health, you have to be in an all-around caloric deficit. I hope this was clear. I hope you guys got something from this conversation. If you did, please share it so everybody can see it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.